question. Okay, so what about diabetes? First of all, an introduction. Diabetes is terrible. I mean, it's a deadly disease. It is the number one cause, for example, of acquired blindness in the United States. Heart attack and stroke are very common. It is the number one cause of acquired kidney disease, dialysis, kidney transplant, kidney failure. Many people with diabetes lose a lot of the nerve sensation in their feet after periods of years of burning pain and neuropathy, and that often leads to an infection, which often leads to gangrene, which leads to amputation. So diabetes is no kidding around. It's just a terrible illness. And in my personal experience, when I was a regular general surgeon, I would often be consulted, and one of my jobs would be to see a diabetic who had an infected, gangrenous, dead foot, and I would cut off their leg. As a doctor, you have to get used to stuff. You know, you see bleeding and trauma and things like that. You get used to things. But it's pretty brutal. It's pretty rough to take a saw to somebody's leg and cut off their leg. I mean, that's real primitive stuff. It's Civil War kind of rough and tough stuff. And when I think that we have a chance maybe to protect our patients from ever having to face that, I get pretty excited. I get pretty emotional. How does it work and what's going on? First of all, type 1 and type 2 diabetes. We're talking mainly about type 2 diabetes today. We can talk about type 1, but it's a little different story. Because I'm talking about type 2 diabetes. How do you get type 2 diabetes? Well, I'm going to give you a simplistic explanation, which is the body needs to move sugar into the cells. And insulin moves the sugar into the cells of the body. And as you get heavier, you become resistant to the effect of insulin, so you need more insulin to drive the sugar in. So the body of a heavier person says, I need more insulin. As a side effect of requesting more insulin, you drive more sugar in, and it's not efficiently used, so you make extra fat, which then makes you heavier, which makes you more insulin resistant. So it's a progressive illness. It's a vicious cycle. I get heavy, I'm heavier, I need more insulin. I need more insulin, which makes me heavier, so I get worse, and I need more insulin, so I get heavier, so need more insulin, so I get heavier, and that's a progressive illness. And then as the sugars go higher, we can measure how bad things are by measuring sugar-coated hemoglobin. That's called the hemoglobin A1C. And basically, that's how much of your hemoglobin molecule in the blood has been coated with sugar. It's candy-coated hemoglobin. And the studies are very clear. The higher your sugar-coated insulin is, the more deadly your coming 5 years are going to be as far as heart attack and stroke and blindness and kidney failure and amputation. So sugar-coated insulin is a good indication of bad things to come. Now, one of the things that we have told diabetics for years is, oh, why don't you just lose some weight? And so when the doctor, your doctor, has seen you, your doctor in a nice, thoughtful way has probably said, you know, you need to lose some weight, and then you tried and it didn't work very well. And so we want to talk for a second why that happens and give you a little background in preparation for talking about the surgery. Why is it that people fail to lose weight when they're told that they face death, amputation, blindness, dialysis, and things like that? Because a lot of us feel that obesity is very simple, right? It's calories in and calories out. So if diabetes is that straightforward, it should be pretty easy to solve the problem. If you're a good, honorable American, you know, respectful, good character, then all you have to do is push yourself back from the table, eat less, and exercise more. And that's the solution. And if you fail to do that, there's something wrong with you. You're a bad person. You're weak. You lack good character. A heavy person is a sinful glutton. A heavy person has emotional problems. When they were growing up, their mother withheld love. And without that love, they eat cake. to replace the love that was missing from their childhood. As a surgeon, I would like to say to that theory, okay, because we've taken thousands of people and we've given them, say, psychiatric counseling and said, hey, let's counsel you for mom's lack of love and see if we can make you thinner. Or we could give you medicine, give you Prozac and make you thinner. Or we could take you to a boot camp, and give me 20 push-ups, maggot, and chase you around. And what we found is that diet and exercise programs do work for short term, and then we fail. That is, 95% of people on a diet and exercise program that's followed scientifically, not the back of a matchbook or on TV, is people regain that weight a year or two later. Okay? So that means potentially that idea that obesity is simple and easily fixed may be incorrect. So let's put that idea out of your mind for a second. I'll give you another theory for obesity. But I want to start off by talking about your breathing. I think you're breathing too darn fast. I want you to use your intelligence and your character to stop your breathing for me. Just hold your breath. Anybody have kids? Okay. Do you ever have your kids say, I'm going to hold my breath unless you get me what I want that toy? Does that bother you? Are you worried about that? No. Because God has fitted in us a powerful...
I got a couple.
Oh, good. Thank you. God has fitted in us a powerful system which controls our breathing. And you could say with your character and your willpower all you want. Here, watch. I'm not breathing. I'm not breathing. I'm not breathing. You're going to breathe. You can't overwhelm that. Because the system built into us is so powerful, you're going to breathe. Okay? Imagine now, what do you think God has done with rats and bats and cats and mosquitoes as far as their needing to eat? Wolves, elephants, mice. How do they know how much to eat? Well, maybe it wouldn't be too surprising for me to tell you that we have now figured out that we found a couple of the hormonal controls of eating. And it's not the psychology of a mouse that makes them fat. What we found is, just like in a car, there's an accelerator and a brake, we found a hunger hormone in people. And if you were God creating heaven and earth, where would you put a human being's hunger hormone? Your stomach. That's where we found it. It's a amino acid string protein, just like insulin, and it's called ghrelin, G-H-R-E-L-I-N, or ghrelin. And when we inject it into you, or mice, or rats, or cats, you get really hungry. And when we measure in your bloodstream, if it's low, you're not hungry. And it goes up, you are hungry. And then guess what else we found? It goes up for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. What do you think happens if you go on a diet? It goes up until you give in. Just like if you held your breath. Until I got to start breathing, okay? Ghrelin goes up and up and up until you give in. So, no matter what character you may have, the chances of you overwhelming that ghrelin seems slim. But not only is there an accelerator pedal that we found for the body's hunger system, we've also found a brake. And in science and medicine, a brake on eating is called satiety or satiation. I'm satiated, I'm full. So we found the brake. The brake is also a peptide hormone. That's a string of amino acids, and it has the unimaginative name of peptide YY. You might ask why they... but peptide YY, and again, where would God, if he's creating heaven and earth, where would he put peptide YY? At the bottom of the small intestine. So when the stream of food fills the gut and reaches the bottom, peptide YY goes up and it says you're full. And I could make a hungry person or a hungry dog, and they're about to eat a big bite of something, and I can inject this and they'll go, I'm full. So those old psychiatric, psychological, and maybe even religious sinful explanations for obesity, I think, are incorrect. Okay? The idea that someone is heavy or thin based on their character, I think, is incorrect. Instead, just like your height or your skin color or how many fingers you have, that's kind of fixed inside of us. We now think that the hormonal controls of food is very powerful. Maybe not 100%, but it's not easily controlled by you saying, I think I will lose weight. It's saying, I think I will breathe less. Yeah, you get back to me on that. Okay, now, so now we kind of have some background on diabetes. We have some background on obesity, and we would like to fix your diabetes. Well, we could give you some medicines. We could say, why don't you diet and exercise, and the chances of that working is very slim. We could give you medicines, but the medicines are associated with a lot of problems. Okay? As you give people insulin, they tend to get actually heavier. The oral tablets don't cure it. There's a new kind of medicine called Byetta. Okay, do you know about Byetta? Byetta is a medicine that we isolated from the saliva of Gila monsters. And you inject it twice a day. You know, there's a TV show called The World's Worst Jobs. Can you imagine being a Gila monster wrangler trying to get Gila monster spit? Anyways. So medicines don't work very well in reversing this terrible disease. Diet and exercise doesn't work very well. Well, one question is, though surgery does cause weight loss. And another question that came up that's very interesting is, which is a better person? Somebody who loses weight for their diabetes by their own willpower, by diet and exercise, or somebody who loses weight with a gastric bypass? Which weight loss is better? A lot of people used to think, well, weight loss is weight loss because they both help diabetes get better. But a group of French researchers asked that question in mice. They found a strain of obese diabetic mice, and they did gastric bypasses on these obese mice. Can you imagine that? Then they took the other mice in the control group and they watched the weight loss in the obese diabetic mice who had a gastric bypass, and they watched the weight loss, and they made the food in the other groups low enough so the weight loss in both groups was the same, and they watched their diabetes. Which group got better faster? The bypass. Which group had a higher percentage cure of diabetes? The bypass, even though the weight loss was the same. Now comes the question, why? Because the bypass does more than weight loss. This is why we now are on the threshold of saying we can cure diabetes. What they found is that there are other hormones that control the sugar in the body. Two in particular are called gastrointestinal peptide, abbreviated as GIP, and glucagon-like peptide 1, also called GLP. And when you do a bypass, because these chemicals come out of the pancreas, GLP and GIP go up, which help control the diabetes. Not only that, when you bypass the pancreas, the little beta cells, that make the insulin, hypertrophy and grow. So, we now think we're on the threshold of saying the gastric bypass has a chance of curing diabetes. Way well. So imagine a lifetime of shots and measuring your sugars and all this stuff and complications, or a 30-minute surgery tomorrow.